we passed the Wilson Funeral Home with the Heslop Brothers Chapel, which is mentioned a variety of times, or a few times, I think, in the poetry. And that can be reviewed. But we come here because this is, according to the folks with the Martins Ferry Historical Society, this was actually where the WPA swimming pool was that James Wright's family helped to dig in 1937. If you see the plaque, you'll see the plaque at the beginning as you come into the recreation center if you want to take a look. By the way, this is the recreation center where we'll be coming back tonight for music and open mic and so forth. So you know where it is. With that, I'm just going to turn it over to our friend Bubba here to read. Bubba, that's the title?
The Old WPA Swimming Pool in Martins Ferry, Ohio.
Yeah, gather close.
Gather up, children.
I am almost afraid to write down this thing. I must have been, say, 7 years old. That afternoon, the families of the WPA had come out to have a good time celebrating a long gouge in the ground that the fierce husband had filled with concrete. We knew even then the Ohio River was dying. Most of the good men who lived along that shore wanted to be in love and give good love to beautiful women who weren't pretty, and to small children like me who wondered, what the hell is this? When people don't have quite enough to eat in August and the river that is supposed to be some holiness starts dying, they swim in the earth. Uncle Sherman, Uncle Willie, Uncle Emerson, and my father helped dig that hole in the ground. I had seen by that time 2 or 3 holes in the ground, and you know what they were. But this one was not the usual cheap economics. It was not the solitary scar on a poor man's face, that respectable hole in the ground you used to be able to buy after you died for $75, and your wages tacked for 6 months by the Heslop brothers. Brothers, dear God.
Brothers, dear God.
No, this hole was filled with water. And suddenly I flung myself into the water. And all I had on was a jockstrap my brothers stole from a miserable football team. Oh, never mind. Jesus Christ, my father and my uncles dug a hole in the ground. No grave for once. It is going to be hard for you to believe. When I rose from that water, a little girl who belonged to somebody else, a face thin and haunted, appeared over my left shoulder and whispered, "Take care now. Be patient and live. I have loved you all this time and didn't even know I am alive."
Thanks, Bubba.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for letting me do it.
Beautifully read.
Thank you.
That hole in the ground.
Maybe the color of the water's right.
So let's.
So
Was it this very pool?
Not this pool.
This is the site of where the pool was.
Water never changes.
Where's the jockstrap?
You got to go in and find out.
I looked at the roof of that bathhouse. I wondered if it dated back to
The jockstrap is still floating.
Look at that.
But you know, we pass these things, and most people won't know that this is.
Where I wonder where she
Past
was.
life.
Oh no, she was under.
And there's that sign, 1936. Wright would have been 9 years old, I think, when he remembered this experience. Straight. I don't know why I should cling to that particular useless detail. It may have something to do with the frequency of my family's moving. By the time I was 10 years old, we had lived at least a half a dozen houses, which were scattered about from one another about as widely as possible in a small town of 16,000 inhabitants. All this restless moving around didn't bother me, especially at the time. On the contrary, I love the variety of neighborhoods in Martins Ferry, a skinny place stretched out along the river between the railroad and the abrupt hills. By the time I was in the 5th grade, I had attended 3 different grade schools. It was mildly disconcerting to make new friends, whole worlds of friends, so often. But in a small town, as in any town or city, a single grade school is an entire human society with its own heroes, beauties, snotty sons of bitches, cruelties, lonelinesses, and basketball teams. By the time I entered high school, where all the local nations gathered together like all the bewildered Buddhists, Taoists, Mongolians, and Hindus wandering puzzled along the streets of Chang'an during the high days of the Tang dynasty, I sometimes rejoiced in the gifts of my wandering and the restless dwellings, for I cherished the friends I had made in distant places all the way from Cuckoo. Okay, right. Cuckoo Lane in the north of town, just above Wheeling Steel, and the Blau Knox factories, all the way down south along the river, always the river, below the LaBelle Lumber Company and its yards of sawdust, fragrant as rancid pollen, down to the old empty mill fields, the cherry lanes and hobo jungles, lost in the wilderness of Etnaville, the junction where the traveling carnivals camped during the summer and besieged the citizenry of Martins Ferry and Bridgeport. I had lived in all the neighborhoods except the wealthy ones up on the hills away from the factories and the river, and I knew most of the languages and carry with me today the affections of those words. Affections of those words. I think that's the quote you had. So we thought, even though obviously the house isn't there, for a poet, it's still there, I think. For poetry, I think it's still there. And it's important to see that in Martins Ferry, the Historical Society didn't make it a museum or even keep it. I don't know when it was torn down, but
I don't know.
But this was the neighborhood but he moved around frequently.
But he was born in the house.
And he was born in the
He was born in the house.
Got some poems here.
First of all, I'll say this, we're all pretty much familiar with this cover, right? This is not this bridge. And as Rick St. John was pointing out, one of the themes of this is absence, right? The house is gone, the terminal bridge is gone.
Erase your poetry.
Erase, there it is.
Oh yeah, is that what that's about? Okay. But we do have a bridge.
And we have a railroad track and all.
And where was the diver mostly?
It would have been around the pier, around the suck holes would appear mostly around the pier. You see these pylons, the brick pylons. That's where you would get the suck holes.
The diver poem is the
There's many of them. There's a flower passage.
the flower passage is in two.
Even if you were above ground this year, you would not know my face. One of the small boys, one of the briefly green. I prowled with the others along the Ohio, raised hell in the B&O boxcars after dark, and sometimes in the evening chawed the knots of my trousers on the riverbank, while the other children of Blast Furnace and mine fought and sang in the channel current, daring the Ohio. Shepherd of the dead, one of the tall men, I did not know your face. One summer dog day after another, you rose and gathered your gear and slogged downhill of the river ditch to dive into the blind channel. You dragged your hooks all over the rubble sludge and lifted the 12-year bones. Now you are dead and turned over to the appropriate authorities. Christ have mercy on me. I would come to the funeral home if I were home in Martins Ferry, Ohio. I would bring to your still face a dozen modest and gaudy carnations. But I am not home in my place where I was born and my friends drowned, so I dream of you, mourning. I walk down the B&O track near the sewer main, and there I gather, and here I gather, the flowers I only know best. The spring leaves of the sumac stink only a little less worse than the sewer main. And up above that gouged hill, where somebody half crazy tossed a cigarette straight down into a pile of sawdust in the heart of the LaBelle Lumber Company, there on the blank mill field, it is the blind and tough fireweeds I gather and bring home. To you, for my drowned friends, I offer the true sumac and the foul trillium, whose varicose bloom swells the soil with its bruise. And a little later, I bring the still totally unbelievable spring beauty that for some hidden reason nobody raped to death in Ohio.
That good?
So what we're looking at here is Wheeling Island, right? So at the tip of Wheeling Island, further up to the north, was where the Wheeling Gospel Tabernacle was. Billy Sunday.
Billy Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah. And Homer Rodeheaver.
Let's take a minute, look at the river.
Phil and I came down here maybe 2 weeks ago, and this has not grown. This just
Yeah, we were able to get down to the river.
to the river. Yeah. What is this plant?
The trail right there.
Question.
Japanese knotweed. Oh yeah. I was trying to find. We also went to the sewer main, by the way. We could have gone there.
We'll talk about it. And no trespassing.
Autumn begins in Martins Ferry, Ohio. In the Shreve High football stadium, I think of Polacks nursing long beers. Faces of Negroes in the blast furnace at Benwood, and the ruptured night watchmen of Wheeling Steel dreaming of heroes. All the proud fathers are ashamed to go home. Their women cluck like starved pullets, dying for love. Therefore, their sons grow suicidally beautiful at the beginning of October and gallop terribly against each other's bodies. That's the best line, isn't it? Therefore. One line.
Something
It's a mathematical
something I never thought of before until standing here just now. But when he says the blast furnace at Benwood, sitting here in the stadium, the blast furnace would have been across the river, and you would have seen the glow of the fires from the mill would have been reflected in the river, but you would have seen the glow of that from.
Is the river on the other side of that brick building?
Yeah.
Yes. Weirton Stadium's built right next to the steel mill, so you could really see. I mean, like literally that building to the Weirton Steel. Weirton Steel and Weirton High School was the football field was here. The mill was there.
Is the Purple Riders, is that a reference to Zane's Riders of the Purple Sage? Does anyone know?
Yes.
Zane Grey was from around.
No, it makes sense to me. We were trying to figure that out,
Ohio.
and I'm relieved.
I like that.
I'm just using my Jeopardy skills.
Speculation.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Superpower.
We're all
You didn't phrase it.
following
Yes, it was you phrased it as a question.
Martins Ferry was not named after Dean Martin, by the way. And Dean Martin is from Steubenville.
Is
Yes.
he really?
Martinelli.
And isn't there a statue of Dean Martin there?
My wife's related to the family.
Your wife's related to the Dean Martin family. Wow. I'm impressed.
Wow. And then, did I guess Lou Gross the toe kicked the field goals right here?
Right here, and then the Cleveland Browns. Yeah.
For that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
64 team.
Phil and I were here last week trying to stake this out when it was open, and we were counting on that. There was a father teaching his son to kick field goals. It was
And we were on the
great.
50-yard line.
And
the
he
kid
made
kicked
one.
one.
You did? 50 yards?
15.
Oh, okay. I was
We
gonna say, wait.
gave him a
It was an
standing
extra
ovation.
point.
Okay.
He did. He deserved it.
He did.
Well, our last stop will be at the cemetery.
People ask if James Wright is buried here. No. So why are we here? Why? To see the view, to see the river, to see the town. And it was where he and his first wife, Liberty, walked up all the way to the top. And John's going to read this.
So essentially, at the beginning of my book, I speak about how Riverview Cemetery, you can actually follow the history of the growth of the town as you walk up the hill. The lower portions were like Scotch Irish, and it was about the immigration into the city to work in the mills, and how there's like the Greek population, which Liberty Cardoulis's family, his first wife, they're actually closer to the crest of the hill at the top, but you can see like bands of different kinds of ethnic names as you ascend the hill. But what Phil was asking me to find in the book, and it's something I've written about at more length in other places, is that in Christmas Eve, at the end of his time at Kenyon College, he was just about to graduate, and he had asked Liberty to marry him. The two of them walked up to the crest of the hill on a bitter cold Christmas Eve, and he, in his classic kind of like inflated rhetoric, gestured to the town below him and spoke the words that we're all familiar with from the beginning of Dante's Inferno. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. That was, this place will be death to us, and liberty. That's the two things that actually, I think the only two things they ever agreed on was that they both needed to leave Martins Ferry, and so one of the world's worst marriages was really just two like souls in that regard, that they needed to leave Martins Ferry in order to claim some sanity on their own. I mean, Liberty's father had forbid her from becoming a nurse, and so she essentially left the home, was kicked out of the home, and it was only after she had married. You can see the blue domes of that Greek Orthodox church. You can see all of that from the very crest. You can see the big Wheeling Island and the city, and of course the factories and the football stadium. All of that is visible from the crest of the hill here. What's fascinating is that after this kind of bonding event, Jim went back to Kenyon and phoned her up while she was on a shift at the hospital and said, "I can't go through with this. I can't marry you." And it was like another 2 weeks before he finally just said, "Oh, all right, I'll do it." I mean, because he was kind of helpless in a lot of ways, and he was graduating from Kenyon. He hadn't yet won his Fulbright to study in Austria, so I think he was kind of desperate to find some grounding, and she was nothing if not grounding. He constantly refers to Riverview Cemetery in his writings, because in one passage he says the cemetery kind of hovers over us down in the city. You can see it from every part of town. The specter of the Riverview Cemetery. There's another cemetery that's over in Bridgeport to the south, that's called Weeks Cemetery, where his grandmother is buried and where he worked for a summer, and there's a lot of his family, his uncles and
Joe Shunk the diver are over in Weeks Cemetery. So I don't know if that covers your.
Well, yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And this being the last place on the tour, from the top you can see the whole town and the river, and you can, of course, see the river here. So we'll end with beautiful Ohio. Those old Winnebago men knew what they were singing. All summer long and all alone, I had found a way to sit on a railroad tie above the sewer main. It spilled a shining waterfall out of a pipe somebody had gouged through the slanted earth. 16,500 more or less people. And Martins Ferry, my home, my native country, quickened the river with the speed of light. And the light caught there the solid speed of their lives in the instant of that waterfall. I know what we call it most of the time, but I have my own song for it, and sometimes, even today, I call it beauty.